If you don't want to waste your money while building a computer, you definitely need to stay away from these 6 processors. Without further ado, if you've subscribed and left a like, let's begin. AMD Ryzen 7 7800X3D. Like most people, I love this processor as well, but I feel like it's a bit overrated by today's standards. I don't think many X3D users are making full use of its potential. It was considered to be the best gaming processor back then, and it is still a powerful option. But because of the release of new processors and the high price, it's no longer the most sensible option. If I don't go into detail, people might start a hate campaign in the comments. So let's get right into it. Firstly, we need to understand how the X3D series function. X3D processors have a very high amount of L3 cache. This provides increased gaming performance, but you need to play games that really strain the processor. So the L3 cache grants a significant advantage in CPU-intensive games such as Counter-Strike and Valorant. Furthermore, if you use a GPU that is designed for 1440p and above, such as the RTX 5080 at 1080p, you can see the advantage provided by the X3D more clearly. But don't forget, as the resolution increases, the load of the CPU decreases, and more of the work gets loaded onto the GPU. The processor cannot shine if the GPU isn't feeding it enough data. That's why the 9800X3D and 7600X3D deliver similar results at 4K resolution. So if you're building a high-end gaming PC for AAA games, X3D processors become less important. Keep that in mind. To summarize, if you mainly play esports games, X3D processors are a great choice for you. Or if you're going to be using a powerful graphics card, such as the RTX 5080 in 1080p, the X3D processors would be a nice choice for you too. If you need both a good gaming performance and a good rendering performance, you can consider the 9000 series X3D processors. On the other hand, if rendering performance is important to you, do not buy X3D processors. And if you're planning to play AAA games in 1440p or higher, it might make more sense to spend your budget on other components instead. Now let me explain why I especially do not recommend the 7800X3D. 1. Price. On Best Buy, the 9800X3D and 7800X3D can sometimes be found at nearly the same price. In fact, you can find the 9700X, which is a really good processor, for even cheaper. In today's market, buying the 7800X3D only makes sense if you find it at a low price. 2. Older technology. As the 7800X3D is priced similarly to the 9700X and the 9800X3D, it makes sense to compare it against them. The rendering performance of X3D processors before the 9000 series is really weak due to their architecture. They can only be used as a gaming processor, and I definitely do not recommend them for rendering work. The 9700X and the 9800X3D are more balanced at both gaming and rendering thanks to architecture improvements. These improvements in the 9000 series make the difference between the two fields more acceptable. 3. Heating. Even though it's not something that affects everyone, the 9700X and the 9800X3D run cooler compared to the 7800X3D during gaming, also thanks to architectural improvements. If you want to save money on components other than the CPU and GPU, 9000 series processors make more sense. I have to make an important warning here. This only applies to games. During rendering, the 9800X3D gets hotter than the 7800X3D. This is because of architectural changes, which leads the 9800X3D to draw more power and perform better during rendering, which naturally leads to higher temperatures. 4. Its performance compared to the 9700X. If you make a few simple adjustments to the 9700X, you can get a significant performance boost at the cost of slightly higher temperatures. In fact, it can even outperform the 7800X3D in some situations. Even when it doesn't, it performs pretty well considering the $100 price difference. Furthermore, its rendering performance is noticeably better as well. The 9700X becomes a much better choice, especially if you're playing AAA games in high resolutions like 1440p. Long story short, I think I've explained my thoughts about X3D processors in enough detail. For the processors after this, I won't go into this much detail. I gave this much detail because I think X3Ds are a bit overrated. Core i5-14400F. Compared to the 13400F, which I'll get into later, the i5-14400F is totally unnecessary. It performs almost exactly the same as the 13400F whilst running hotter, so I don't really recommend it. I'll talk about the 13400F in detail in the recommendations part of the video. There's no point in doing that now. Ryzen 9 7900X3D and 7950X3D. These are processors that were hailed as the best gaming processor of all time a while back, but that were actually pretty disappointing. While the Ryzen 9 processors are generally used for production and other heavy workloads, X3D variants shine through in gaming performance. But even though X3D models grant an advantage in gaming thanks to their large cache, they are usually weaker in rendering and multi-core workloads compared to the standard X versions. So the actual features that stand out in these processors are high core counts and large cache sizes. To explain the technical reason why I don't recommend the 7900 X3D and the 7950 X3D, in processors, there are CCDs or core complex dies that almost work like the brain of the processor. Processors with one CCD perform better, especially in gaming. With two CCDs, internal communication becomes more complex, which can cause delays in data transfer between cores. This leads to stability issues and performance drops. This is exactly what the general problem of the Ryzen 9 series is. Communication issues arise between the multiple CCDs, and this negatively affects performance. While the Ryzen 7 7800 X3D has only one CCD, the Ryzen 9 7950 X3D has two CCDs. So for gaming, the 7800 X3D is much more powerful than the 7950 X3D. In summary, I definitely do not recommend these processors. If you were planning to buy these, I recommend buying non-X3D models of 7900 or 7950, or the 9000 series, which applies this formula better. i3 12100F, 13100F, and 14100F. Simply terrible processors. While the Ryzen 5 5500, its competitor on the AMD side, has 6 cores and 12 threads, the i3 series still has the insufficient arrangement of 4 cores and 8 threads. This leads to significant bottlenecks if you use it with a strong graphics card. Moreover, this is not the only issue either. Its cache size is lower compared to the Ryzen 5 5500 as well. i3 processors perform better only in programs that rely on single-core performance. Looking at the general picture, the i3 12100F is weaker than the Ryzen 5 5500 in most scenarios. The i3 13100F is mostly head-to-head with the Ryzen 5 5500. The i3 14100F is somewhere between the Ryzen 5 5500 and the Ryzen 5 5600G. Be careful here. I'm saying 5600G, not 5600. The 5600G is a weaker processor than the 5600. If you're saying they got themselves together in the 14th generation, take it back. Because with i3 processors, the temperature gets higher with each new generation. The 12th gen can be used with the stock fan. This is a bit harder for the 13th gen, but with the right settings, you can still use it with the stock fan. But the 14th gen gets unnecessarily hot. Definitely avoid using it with the stock fan. In fact, I'd advise you to stay away from the i3 series altogether, if possible. Core i7 14700, a model that I don't want to talk about, just like the 14400F. It's very unnecessary when a monster like the 13700 exists. And on top of that, it's among the processors that can fail due to drawing more power due to microcode issues. While this issue is also present on the 13700, it's less common. I definitely do not recommend the 14700 due to its unnecessarily hot temperatures and high power draw. Plus, it doesn't offer a notable improvement over the 13700 either. Intel Core Ultra series. The Intel processors that were supposed to be called the 15th generation were released as Core Ultra. It consists of Core 5, 7, and 9 models, but the naming is a total mess. It goes like 225, 235, 245, 265, and 285. I could explain them, but there's no need because these processors are really terrible. The only thing they are good at is the single-core performance. But with so many drawbacks, this advantage doesn't really matter. Why are they so terrible? Here's why. If you remember, I've talked about what cores and threads are before. Hyperthreading has been completely removed in the Core Ultra series, so each core can only run one thread now. This means that none of the cores can do more than one job at once anymore. This significantly reduced the total thread count, leading to worse performance compared to previous generations, especially in some games and programs. Also, the socket will change with Nova Lake processors that are planned to come out next year. The current gen Arrow Lake processors use the LGA 1851 socket, but the upcoming Nova Lake processors will switch to the LGA 1954. So, if you bought an LGA 1851 motherboard just to be able to upgrade when newer processors come out, you're out of luck. A socket will go to waste after being used for just one generation. I can't even imagine how those who spent a fortune on their motherboards feel. So, what alternatives can you choose instead of these processors? Now let's talk about the 8 processors that I recommend. The processors I'll get into now will be the best value options in the market. If you're ready, let's get started. Ryzen 5 3600 and Ryzen 5 5500. If I had to recommend a processor for budget builds, I'd recommend these, besides the 5600. At first glance, the Ryzen 5 3600 and 5500 may seem very similar in performance, but there are important differences most people miss. These two processors are considered entry-level today and are serviceable for budget PCs. In gaming performance, sometimes the Ryzen 5 5500 is better, sometimes the Ryzen 5 3600 is. So why mention the old Ryzen 5 3600? Because despite the fact that Ryzen 5 5500 is newer and Zen 3 based, it uses a mobile and desktop hybrid architecture called Cezanne, and some important features are quite restricted. For example, the Ryzen 5 5500 does not support PCI Express 4.0, it only supports PCI Express 3.0. Plus, its L3 cache size is limited to 16 megabytes. Meanwhile, the Ryzen 5 3600 has a 32 megabyte L3 cache, and it supports PCI Express 4.0. So, while it's technically older, the 3600 can sometimes outperform the 5500. You can think of the Ryzen 5 5500 as a cut-down Ryzen 5 5600, but these cuts create some disadvantages compared to the 3600. The Ryzen 5 3600 can sometimes be more powerful in gaming, especially in esports games like Valorant and Counter-Strike 2, thanks to its higher cache and PCIe 4.0 support. Lastly, their gigahertz values also differ, but if you don't do production work, you don't need to worry about it. So, which one should you pick? The answer is easy. If the PCI Express version and the cache size aren't deal breakers for you, buy the cheaper one. Since the value of Ryzen 5 3600 isn't really recognized today, I wanted to talk about this processor as well. Core i5-13400. Whereas the 12400F competes with the Ryzen 5 5600, the i5-13400 competes with the Ryzen 5 7500F and the 7600 instead. This is pretty good because the LGA 1700 socket supports both DDR4 and DDR5. You can either use the 12100F with DDR5 RAM and throw your money down the drain, or you can build a cheaper computer and use the 13400F with a DDR4 motherboard. Unless you need it for work purposes, there is not really a point in picking a DDR5 RAM unless you're using an i7 or i9. It's good that the i5-13400F is a cheaper competitor against the Ryzen 5 7500F. Moreover, it's a nice plus that it has switched to 10 cores and 16 threads. Neither processor plays well with the stock cooler, so I don't really want to comment on that. Ryzen 5 7500F and Ryzen 5 7600. These two processors are actually very similar. The only serious difference between them is that the 7600 has integrated graphics, while the 7500F does not. I can safely say that the 7500F is the best price-to-performance processor of the AM5 platform. Thanks to its advanced architecture, it can perform similarly to the 5800X3D in some cases. If you want to build a new PC and if your budget allows it, the 7500F is a great choice. On the subject of stock coolers, the 7500F and the 7600 generally do not work pretty well with it. You can use it, but I don't recommend it. A 120mm tower-type air cooler with 4 heat pipes will be more than enough. Ryzen 5 5600. I can call this processor the GOAT. For AM4 builds, this processor offers the best price-to-performance ratio. If you want to build a budget PC, it's still a strong choice today. The point you need to pay attention to here is the difference between the 5600 and the 5600X. While you need to get rid of the stock cooler and get a more powerful one to keep the 5600X cool, the Ryzen 5 5600 performs really well with the stock fan. The performance difference is only about 2 FPS, but if you overclock the 5600 just a little bit, you can reach 5600X levels fairly easily. Now up next is the best 2 processors in terms of price to performance. But before that, I need to tell you something important. As you know, I normally don't talk about this, but a large majority of the viewers are not subscribed and don't hit the like button, and this negatively affects the views. If you want to support me, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and a comment. This way, I can create more videos for you. Now let's continue where we left off. Core i7-13700. The i7-13700 is an absolute monster. It comes with more cores and a bigger cache compared to the 12700. Its gaming performance can leave even the 12900K behind. Generally, it's head-to-head with the Ryzen 7900X. Of course, as with all 13th and 14th generation Intel processors, you must keep the temperatures under control. If you already have a 12th generation processor, the 13700 could be a nice upgrade option. Ryzen 7 9700X. It's the processor I think is the most deserving of its price and my favorite of all AM5 processors. Thanks to improvements in the 9000 series, its production performance is much better, it's not overpriced, the core count is high, and the best part, if you make some very simple adjustments, you can get a gaming performance very close to the 7800X3D. With the Ryzen 7 9700X available, it doesn't make sense to recommend the 7800X3D at all. The only advantage of the 7800X3D is that it's a bit more powerful in esport games that benefit from high cache sizes. And all of the drawbacks of the 7800X3D have been addressed in the 9700X. Let's slowly wrap up the video. So which processor would you recommend? Don't forget to share your opinions in the comments section. I want to know what you have to say. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit the like button. If not, feel free to dislike. Stay mysterious until the next video. Take care, and bye.